You're standing in a warehouse in Melbourne. It's 1991. 30 computers hum around you. 12 laser printers run nonstop. 16 employees feed paper through machines that haven't stopped for 3 months. The air smells like ink and hot plastic. Behind you is a stack of paper weighing 1 ton. 1 ton of lottery tickets. Every combination. Every number that could possibly win. You're not gambling. You haven't gambled in 30 years. You're about to fly this stack to Virginia. You're about to become the only person in history to legally force a $27 million jackpot into your hands. The FBI doesn't know yet. The CIA doesn't know yet. Interpol doesn't know yet. In a few months, all three will be looking for you, and they will find nothing, because everything you're about to do is completely, perfectly legal. But let's go back. Before the warehouse, before Virginia, before Australia. Let's go back to a country where they paid you $88 a month and wouldn't let you leave. You are an economist, and you are about to discover that the lottery isn't gambling at all. It's math. You are born in 1934, Romania. The country is poor, and under communist rule, it is getting poorer. You are Jewish. That makes things harder still. A weight you carry quietly, the kind of thing you don't talk about at dinner. You become an accountant first, then an economist. You work for a mining consortium. Your salary is 360 lei a month, about $10. Some months, closer to $88. It was never going to be enough. You watch people around you turn to crime to survive. Smuggling, black market currency. You watch friends disappear into it and not come back the same. You don't do that. Instead, you start reading mathematical journals, probability theory, combinatorics. While other men trade on the black market, you sit under a single bulb with a notebook, doing something nobody around you understands. You're not looking for luck. You're looking for a flaw. And then, one night, something clicks. A government lottery. A finite set of numbers. A finite number of possible combinations. A jackpot that, under the right conditions, could be worth more than buying every single one of those combinations. If the jackpot is big enough and the combinations are few enough, winning isn't chance. It's arithmetic. You call it combinatorial condensation. It takes roughly 5 years to fully develop. You can't afford to be wrong. One shot with borrowed money in a country where failure means staying poor forever. Or worse. It's 1964. You're 30 years old. You have the formula. Now you need money. Money you don't have to buy the tickets. So you do something almost nobody in your position would think to do. You ask people to trust you with their savings. You pool money from a small group of friends and investors. Romanian lottery. 6 numbers. You run the math. You know exactly which combinations give you the best coverage for the least money. You don't need every combination, just enough to guarantee a high probability of hitting at least 5 of 6 numbers. You print the tickets. You buy them. You wait. The numbers come up. You match 5 of 6. Not the grand prize, but a solid second-tier win. Real money. Money that, in communist Romania, changes everything. You pay your investors. You take your share. And you sit there staring at the result with a thought that will define the rest of your life. It worked. The formula isn't theoretical anymore. It's real. And you immediately understand the bigger problem. You live in a country that won't let you leave with money, won't let you do this again at scale, and is watching everyone who suddenly has cash. You take what you won. You use part of it to bribe your way toward an exit visa. In 1966, you leave Romania for Israel. You will never live in Romania again. Israel doesn't have what you need yet. You get married, you start a family, but the lottery infrastructure isn't built for what you're planning, not at the scale you're imagining. So you watch, you wait, you think. In the early 1980s, you move again to Australia. Cost of living is low. The lottery systems are still developing, full of gaps and nobody else has noticed. British Commonwealth citizenship, which takes years to earn, opens UK lotteries too. You refine the formula first. The Romanian method tried to predict the most probable 5 of 6 combinations. Elegant, but limited. The new version is blunter, far more powerful. Instead of predicting anything, you buy almost every combination there is. If a lottery's jackpot is worth more than 3 times the cost of buying every possible combination, and you can physically print and distribute that many tickets in time, you don't need luck. You need logistics. You organize a syndicate. You call it the International Lotto Fund. You convince thousands of ordinary people, small business owners, machine operators, housekeepers, doctors, to each put in a few $1,000s through what's structured as a life insurance arrangement. In return, they get a slice of whatever you win. You set up computers. You print tickets in bulk. You deliver them to authorized retailers across Australia. The numbers come up. You win. Again and again. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, your syndicate wins 12 separate lottery jackpots across Australia and Europe. 12. Each time, the same quiet message to your investors. We entered. We won. You're in your home in Australia. It's early 1992. You're looking at a printout from the United States. Virginia. 6 numbers, drawn from a field of 44. That means 7,059,052 possible combinations. At $1 a ticket, covering every single combination costs just over $7 million. The jackpot has climbed past $27 million. The math isn't close. It's overwhelming. You move fast. You recruit 2,524 investors, each contributing around $3,000 through Pacific Financial Resources, a structure built specifically for this. With that capital, your team has weeks, not months, to print and distribute as many of those 7 million combinations as physically possible. In your Melbourne warehouse, 30 computers and 12 laser printers run around the clock for nearly 3 months. The output, millions of tickets, each one pre-filled with a different 6-number combination. The paper alone weighs over a ton. Shipping it to the United States costs you $60,000. In Virginia, your team, led by a man named Alex, fans out across the state. Farm fresh grocery stores, gas stations, convenience stores. They feed machines constantly, racing the clock, ultimately securing somewhere between 5 and 6.4 million of the 7,059,052 combinations. On February 15, 1992, just after 11 p.m., a ball machine on live television spits out 6 numbers: 8, 11, 13, 15, 19, 20. Somewhere in your stack, on a ticket processed in the dead of night at a farm fresh in Chesapeake, Virginia. Those exact 6 numbers are sitting there, printed weeks ago, waiting. You match all 6. You also hold 6 second prize tickets, 132 third prize tickets, and well over 100,000 smaller prizes. Total winnings, roughly $33 million. After the cost of the tickets, your profit is close to $24 million. You send word to your investors, short and plain, the same way you always do. The target lottery hit, and you went in, and you won. It made headlines from Melbourne to New York. The New York Times runs the story. People call it impossible. It isn't. It's arithmetic executed at industrial scale. The celebration doesn't last long. Within days, an Australian government agent, looking at the size and structure of your syndicate, contacts Virginia authorities directly. The word he uses is money laundering. Suddenly, this isn't a story about a clever mathematician. It's a story about a foreign operation that just walked away with $33 million from an American state lottery, using thousands of dollars of investor money, a shell structure, and a ton of pre-printed tickets shipped in from overseas. The FBI opens a file. So does the CIA. The U.S. Secret Service gets involved. Interpol is notified. For 4 years, investigators comb through everything. Your finances, your syndicate structure, your travel, your insurance arrangements. Every dollar of the $33 million is traced. You sit through interviews, explaining combinatorics to people trained to look for criminals, not mathematicians. And here's the thing. You have nothing to hide. You didn't break a single law. Not one. After 4 years, the investigation's close. No charges. Virginia pays out the jackpot, as required, in annual installments. But the world has changed because of you. Lottery commissions across the United States and beyond rewrite their rules. Limits on bulk purchases, mandatory in-person sales, restrictions on large syndicates buying combinations en masse. It becomes known, quietly, in lottery circles, as the Mandel loophole, and it's closed forever. You retire from lotteries in 1995. You move to Israel. The formula made you wealthy. But the world that let you use it no longer exists. The loophole is gone. There's nothing left to calculate. So, in 1996, you try something new. You and a business partner set up a cooperative association, later nicknamed the Mondragon Venture, built around the idea of selling shares in land on the remote Pacific island nation of Vanuatu. Thousands of people in Israel buy in. This time, there's no mathematical certainty behind it. No guaranteed jackpot. Just a promise, and a prospectus that, according to Israeli regulators, was never properly filed. The Israel Securities Authority opens an investigation. You're interrogated. You make bail. In 2002, facing an indictment, you leave your wife and children behind in Israel and move to London. In 2004, an Israeli court convicts you, in your absence, of securities fraud. 10 months in prison. A fine of roughly $29,000. You don't go back to face it. You spend the next 21 years moving through the South Pacific. Nauru. Eventually, a quiet beach house in Vanuatu, the same islands your failed land venture was built around. The man who once had the FBI, the CIA, and Interpol investigating a perfectly legal $33 million win is now, on paper, a fugitive from a much smaller case. About $29,000 and 10 months that were never served. In 2019, after 15 years, an Israeli court rules the original in absentia sentence should never have happened that way. But the conviction itself stands. In May 2023, at 80 years old, verify, you fly back into Israel. A Holocaust survivor returning after 21 years, walking into Ben Gurion Airport to ask for a retrial. The Supreme Court hears your case. In December 2023, it rejects your request. No new evidence. The conviction stands. You are, depending on how someone tells it, either the smartest man to ever play a lottery or a fraud who fled justice for 2 decades. Both are true. They describe different decades of the same life. The $33 million Virginia win was never illegal. Not for 1 second. The system had a hole in it, and you found it with a pencil and 30 years of patience. Lotteries worldwide change their rules because of you, a tribute of a kind to how completely you solved their game. The Vanuatu land venture is a different story. No formula saved you there, just an unfiled prospectus, a conviction you never stood to hear, and 2 decades in quiet exile on the same islands you once tried to sell. 14 jackpots, 1 conviction, decades of a man doing exactly what he said he would do, for better and for worse. That was your life. Every notebook page, every printed ticket, every investor who trusted you with a few $1,000s because the math, somehow, always worked. And here's the question that should sit with you tonight. If you'd found a hole that big in the system, used it legally, and made millions, would you have stopped there, or would you have gone looking for the next hole, even when there wasn't one? Tell me in the comments. See you in the next one.